This is Paula Collins, and we are here once again Sunday night at 8 o'clock for the WNY Rapport. I am joined by my co-host, Nikki Lawley, and our special guest, the none other than Jeffrey Hoffman from Ask Me Anything About Cannabis. So, welcome everybody.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Boom
Love it.
Rock,
slay.
boom, slay. So it's been a fabulous week in cannabis. I know Jeffrey's got a lot of things going on. Um, I've got a few things going on. I won a
I
hearing this week to keep myself on the ballot for the position of United States Representative for New York's 21st Congressional District, opposing none other than Republican incumbent Elise Stefanik, whom you may have heard a few things about. And it feels like every day she's in the paper for something. So we are going to fight back and fight back strong because we are smart, strong, and bold. Um, but other
and
than that,
cannabis loving. And
and
cannabis.
cannabis loving. And I gotta say, I've just come from the Democratic Rural Conference for the state of New York, met a lot of electeds there, felt the love, felt the warmth, and felt the rage, not from electeds, but not from people from within the cannabis industry, but from those who are key leaders in their counties, in their towns, in their hamlets. And by golly, they are mad at this slow rollout because they were counting on the tax revenues that were promised to them in the MRTA. So when I introduce myself as not only the candidate, but
The
the next
cannabis candidate.
the cannabis candidate, when people say, "Well, who are you and what is your connection?" And I say, "Well, I've traveled all over the state, been in your district a number of times to see clients or potential clients, and I am a cannabis tax attorney." And oh my goodness, I was ill prepared for the rage that a lot of people have because they are in leadership positions. They may have even worked hard to overcome the opt out movements within their respective areas. And now they're having to eat a little bit of crow or choke on some smoke because no tax dollars have come their way. And as we know, there is a tremendous disparity uh, in the numbers of shops that are opening in the five boroughs versus the numbers of shops that are opening elsewhere in the state. And that's kind of how Nikki and I began to talk a lot about the need for a podcast specifically dedicated to the western part of the state, Western New York. So without further ado, Nikki, what's going on in your world?
Well, just in the last release from the OCM, we saw that there were 54 dispensaries in the Manhattan downstate area, and we're at 12 in Western New York. Hoping that improves dramatically soon rather than later. Um, I've had lots of conversations with people that are just like, "Can we get on with this already?" I'm like, how long are we going to just keep talking about the same shit and getting no results? And like, it's really not healthy. I mean, the mental taxation this has put on so many of these potential operators and these potential people that want to get into the industry and do things the right way has really been pretty devastating for so many people, especially those that are ready to open up, that have all their stuff ready to go. They're just like wait until their lottery number gets called. I mean, like that lottery shit is still, my feelings on that. I'm not a fan.
I hear you, Joseph Ortiz, Joe.
Oh, Joe.
It's better than Long Island, and we did hear from people on Long Island who, God knows why they were at a rural conference, but I guess things do get pretty wild out there, and they feel the wildlife. Jeffrey, I'd be interested in hearing your well, let me just say what happens to me, especially of late, with the new enforcement piece in the budget, which it feels like deja vu, or as we erroneously say, deja vu all over again. Repeat, repeat. Um, but people, whenever we have enforcement come up, I'll get phone calls from people who say, hey, I've got this shop and I really do want to get a license. And how long will it take me to get one? And I have to say, I'm burning the candle at both ends and in the middle lately. So my defenses are a little bit down, and I'm honestly a little bit giddy and inappropriate at times. But I laugh now, and I say, well, you want a license in about 3 to 6 months, is that right? And they'll say, well, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I say, well, there are people who have been waiting 3 to 6 years at this point, because they're, not only 3 years since MRTA was passed, but there were the people who were marching in the streets and going to the protests and working with lawmakers 3 years before MRTA was inked, and they've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And so I honestly don't know what to tell people now when they say, how long will it take me to get a license? And they'll go to great lengths. Some people will say, well, I've got this, I've got that. And I'll say, dude, people have spent literally millions on buildings or on equipment in the case of processors, and they have been waiting, and they might be number 7,000. So what do you say?
Someday,
Over the rainbow? No, that's somewhere.
someday this will look like the liquor licensing process.
It will. It will.
Liquor got legalized 100 years ago, 90, 100 years ago. It took a long time for that to get settled. And if you want to read the history, I mean, we are in the post-legalization period, but in the period up to when prohibition ended with alcohol, there were running gun battles in the streets, like
Yeah.
people shooting and killing each other, places getting raided and people killed. So let's take a step back and say, hey, at least we're doing it better than we did alcohol, right? When it went through its throes of this. I mean, that's like the best I can say about it. Look, this is New York. That anyone thought this was going to be like seamless and somehow miraculously, forget the Immaculate Conception, the Immaculate Cannabis Program. I mean, you were out of your mind if you thought that was what was going to happen. I mean, Paul, you and I have known each other a long time, and we try not to be out there. I mean, if you're out there as the attorney saying fire and brimstone and the world's collapsing, then everybody freaks out, right? The lawyers are the people that are supposed to come to and do it. So it's not like for the whole longest time here, even from the beginning, I've wanted to say, well, yeah, I'm glad everybody's happy, but just you wait till we get to year 2. I mean, just what point would it have been for me to say that, right? That would have been stupid. But now we're here, and I think, again, those of us that have lived in New York State and City, for which I live in New York City for a long time, have been able to see American government at large scale, very up close. I was very involved in the food cart industry here in New York City, which is one of the more weirdest, probably the weird, forget even cannabis. I mean, I can tell you wackadoodle shit about the food cart industry here in New York City. And it's just, why do we expect it to be logical and make sense? And so, again, it did no good to talk about it in that way 2 years ago, 18 months ago. You may not remember, Paul, the very first event I ever spoke at in cannabis was with you. It was out at Weeksville, right?
I do remember that. And I was like, who
Hawaii
the
Mike.
hell is this Jeffrey Hawaii Mike?
Yeah,
Hawaii who's Mike? This guy?
Who is this idiot with the shaved head next to me? And that was you. That is when you and I met for the first time. And so, back then, what point if you'd have gotten up there or I'd gotten up there and said, we're hoping for the best, but look, folks, it's going to be a fucking shit show, and grab your ankles and have a good time. That talk we were at would have been no fun, right? Right? It was early days in cannabis, and everybody would have looked at us like we were crazy and oh, you party poopers and this whole thing. So, when we got one-on-one with people, and Paula, you're dealing with the store owner, so you did this every day. When you talk one-on-one people, you're like, this is how fucked up it really is, and this is a mess. But if you say that on a large scale, what's the point? So we just kind of didn't. Go ahead.
And I so remember in March, well, it was signed March 31st. I got a phone call probably early April, and somebody said, "So can I apply?" And I said, "Well, no,
No.
we're
Have a
not
good
there
one.
yet. We're not
Have a
there
nice
yet."
day, my friend. Yeah.
And and then they said, "Well, when can I apply?" And I said, "We won't really see an application till like September of next year." And even that was ambitious. But here's where I
Wildly
push.
optimistic.
Yeah, it was. It
Wildly
was. I
optimistic.
know
Yeah.
that was back when I was young, because
Yeah.
we've all
And
aged in
impressionable.
this program. But here's where I push back a little bit on the liquor model, and Joe kind of hit on it a little bit in his comment. He says, "Lol, if we aren't better as a society, then 90 to 100 years ago, we have a lot more issues at hand." That's
We're
true, but let me go a little bit further. Alcohol prohibition was what, 14 years? It wasn't very long. And so for us to say, oh, yeah, it's going to be like unwinding 14 years of prohibition. No, people's great grandmothers have been standing in the stove, at the stove, brewing up things with cannabis. That's why a lot of people will say cannabis is part of the culture for them, because it goes back multiple generations and it wasn't just 14 years. It is imbued in many people's family histories. So I don't think that it's going to be unwound in the amount of time that it took. Basically within 50 years you had a workable structure. I don't think we're going to get there. And of course, my little mantra, enforcement does not work, and the
Sure.
government lost the war on drugs. And so I don't know how facts. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. I don't know how we're going to unwind this, but I do know that we're not the only ones hurting. And like I say, people now, what was interesting at the Democratic Rural Conference was how many people at the table fessed up to, oh, of course, and they start going into their bags and pulling out gummies. And I'm like, put that away because these were not legally acquired products, because they don't have access to very many. I mean, some people did live in areas and some people did have legal products. So it was a mixed crowd. But my point is, this was not a cannabis event. And yet people were really, really disappointed and angry at the rollout. And I thought, gee, I'm right at home, right at home.
Yeah. Upstate is no different than downstate in this regard,
Yeah.
or Western New York. I would just say to Joe's point, Joe, answering you directly, sir. I think there's a few ways we're better off than we were 90 to 100 years ago. In a lot of ways, we're much, much worse off, sir. And I think that's a topic for another day. And, Paula's fighting that battle up north of Albany, right? What you mentioned at the beginning of here, Paula. For those of you that don't know New York's geography that well, the district that Paula's running in is basically north of Albany, except Saratoga. I guess whoever's in that other congressional district really wanted the Adelphi Hotel, so he said, "No, I gotta have that," or she or whoever it is. But yeah, this is what you're fighting for up there, and to Joe's point, are we better as a society than we were 90 to 100 years ago? I mean, I think there's absolutely some ways that we are. That certainly we have people that were completely disenfranchised then that are in some ways enfranchised now, but in some ways similar to what was then. And I think we have a lot of other problems that are unique to our times that overwhelm, frankly, it's just, I, I agree with Joe on the flip side of it. I don't think we're necessarily better off in some of the ways we're talking about. I think there's going to be a backlash against what we're doing. Just kind of my thought. Everybody has kind of taken, this cannabis legalization thing is a given and it's done and it's over. I think there's a lot of women in this country that thought their reproductive rights were kind of settled and how that would work, and are now completely like my mother is going to be 78 here in August, and she's lived to see the whole gamut. She was alive and was of, I mean, reproductive age in a time where the rights were completely the other way. Saw it come, what I guess we would agree is come good, and has now completely gone back 180 degrees. And I think about to be, well, forget about it. If unfortunately what I think is going to happen here in the coming months is going to happen. In a lot of ways, we're not. And a lot of people are not excited about what we're doing with cannabis. I do think we got to watch a little bit of what we do. There's going to be a big pushback, I think, about smell and like all these hippie freaks
Hmm.
smoking everywhere. That's our responsibility. That's our side's responsibility to be on. But I do think pendulums do swing. And I think the swing here in New York towards legalization swung way to one side. New York's an city, particularly, is an incredible, it's everywhere here in the city. And I absolutely think there's going to be we are at probably the high point of whatever it is we as the cannabis community are going to get. And frankly, if anything happens, I don't think it's going to be more in the direction of legalization because you had Biden in both houses of Congress and you couldn't get it done. If
Uh-huh.
anything, I think it's going to slide a little bit back the other way where places are going to say, hey, you hippie freaks are smoking too much, so we're going to not let you smoke outside or just, I don't know what, right? So I just think we got to be cognizant of that. I don't think we're necessarily better. I'm actually with you, Paul, on the timing. I certainly don't think it's going to be as quick as, I'm saying like people who are alive today's kids, it'll be normalized for them, right? People go into a grocery store or liquor store today. Buying alcohol is not even a thing. It's a subconscious thing. I'm walking to the store, I'm getting something, and I'm out.
Yeah, I need coffee, I need beer, I need
I need beer.
cereal. Yeah.
We are not in the generation where that is true. I don't know where the generational cutoff is going to be. Maybe it's people under 20, maybe it's people under 10 now. I don't know what it is. But as long as this is not all rolled back, at some point, kids that are alive today will be adults, and buying cannabis will just be like they'll look at us fogies in the old age home. I remember when Jimmy Ray had to go to Pitt State Pen for 2 years. It'll be like, what the fuck are you old fogies for smoking weed? You people are idiots, right? And I mean, it's just that's what it'll be.
I gotta say, let's segue a little bit to the Western New York. When I go to Buffalo or when I go to see some of my clients in the western part of the state, and I walk around either in Buffalo, right in downtown Buffalo, or in the suburbs, or even in some of the rural what do you call those? Exurbs. Um, I don't smell weed like I do in New York City.
No, you
I'm
do
I
not.
mean
You
I mean, I know I'm back in New York when I open the car door and take my first woof, and there it is. Woof. I'm back home. Hello.
Well, I
Welcome
can
home.
tell you when I went to New York City for MJ Unpacked last year, and it happened to show up in my memories right today. So
And
last year I
who'd you
was
see
there.
then? Who'd you see then?
I saw the sunset.
Yeah,
I saw the
That was
sunset
your
with my
cue. You
pal.
missed your cue.
it's okay. Keep going,
All right, whatever. Yeah, I totally missed it. But
Paula. Toast. There we go. So good. So
glad you
good.
guys are there. But literally, I remember being in the city and I couldn't believe how much weed I smelled. Like I was like, holy shit. Like
You
normally in
remember
Buffalo, you like have a like exorcism head move, like, where's the pot smell? And in New York
yeah,
City, it was like
it was
it
everywhere.
was like everywhere.
Good one, Jeffrey. I remember slipping out and you were sitting, we walked down the sidewalk a little bit and with another friend, your two other friends, remember that? And
Yeah.
you were like, golly, what is this? What is this?
I couldn't believe it. And then
Well,
like we were in front of the what hotel was that? The Marriott or whatever the hell.
Hilton.
Hilton,
the
whatever.
Hilton.
Midtown Hilton.
Hilton. Okay.
Midtown
So
Hilton.
so we're in the Midtown Hilton out front, and I gotta say, everybody's smoking and burning right out front. And these groups of little kids come walking by with their little string that they're all holding on to, or their little like 20-seater little buggies. And I just felt weird. I felt fucking weird. And I mean, I know I shouldn't and I should just accept it, but it was a very strange feeling for me because I don't smoke in front of kids, right? Like not I mean, I guess I have, but discreetly. I mean, I don't just sit here
And
Yeah.
in their little faces, right?
and I think two things. I think one, that's the generational thing, right? Think about alcohol. Like I know people will not think 2 seconds before drinking an alcoholic beverage in front of their kids. This is the thing. It's a subconscious, right? It's just alcohol is a thing that's just part of our society. We do it. Everybody does it, even though
Right.
everybody doesn't do it. It's part of the fabric. Cannabis has this interesting thing that it is part of the fabric because everybody loves Snoop Dogg and ha ha tee hee. Ooh, he smokes that demon lettuce or whatever. It's
Devil's
just
lettuce,
right.
yeah.
I like demon lettuce, demon devil. I like demons better. But anyway, the succubus is the best though. For those of you that used to play D&D, you got your demons, your devils, and your succubuses, or succubi, I guess would be the plural. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But it's what are you going to do along those lines, right? So in New York City, people have just gone crazy, and the law says you can smoke anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, and that's what people are. The law doesn't specifically say that. We get this is kind of public health law. It's governed by cigarettes. Wherever they say you can't smoke cigarettes, you can't do this. And in New York City, it's the parks, right?
So I want to answer James of Flatbush. Welcome back to the show, James. Nassau County, it's not that the county opted out, but so many of the
Right.
municipalities, the villages opted out that it feels like the whole county. I think there are actually, is it 3 towns where it's legal in Nassau County?
I think you're right.
I think it's 3. And it was, it was an option that every county, every town had.
And just real quick, in the 3 where it's legal, you're zoned to be in the toxic waste dump behind the former toxic waste facility behind the town dump. That's where you can put the dispensary. But
yeah,
it's just,
not downtown
stuff.
next to the bakery and the pizza shop.
Not prime RE, as we would say.
Yeah. But James, it was something that was open to municipalities, I believe, until December 31st of 2021. I think, or maybe it was 2020. No,
it was 21. Yeah,
21?
You could opt. It was you had until December 31st of 21 to opt out.
Okay.
You can always opt back in. And in fact, if you go to the OCM website, there's a little web page in the OCM website. Here's the form. You have to pass your resolution in your town or your whatever your municipal subdivision thereof is. You send in that, passage and all, and now you're in. So you could have gotten out by then. The people that are in now can no longer get out, and people that are out can get. The only way you can go is from being out to back in, and there's a way to do that. And the only things you could opt out of were retail. You could not opt out of cultivation. You could not opt out of processing. You could not opt out of distribution. And you cannot opt out of delivery coming into you. So that's,
you can opt out of consumption and retail. That's it.
Correct. Like people doing things physically, like the public coming to a space and doing stuff, that is the only thing you can restrict. Correct.
Which it is possible that I had a few rants about that.
That people wanted to be able to opt out of everything, or what was the rant?
No, it just did not make sense to me that we were essentially encouraging people to drive out of their town or village to purchase something and then drive back to their homes. And there's the potential, of course, that somebody would be so enthused with their purchase that they would light up and consume. And that makes no sense in terms of public safety.
Right. So I guess they're hoping on a lot of delivery. And look, there are dry counties in the South.
Yeah, there are.
So like I grew up in North Carolina and vividly remember, I even think the county I lived in or the one next to it, like literally passed what they called liquor by the drink. This terminology resonates with me from like I was 6 years old. I'm like, yep, they're going to pass liquor by the drink over in Folsom County or whatever it was. It was just, it was crazy.
If you talk to people a little bit younger than I am who grew up in Westchester, they have a lot of tales of going across the line to Connecticut to get beer.
And is that because it was for a little bit, it was 19 or 18 or something longer?
Yeah, certain villages in Westchester County were dry. I don't think the whole county was, but certain villages.
Dry. Okay,
yeah, and so it was easier for them as high school kids or early college to go across to Connecticut and come back.
Right.
But
Well, in
so
Western New York, they went to Canada because
yeah.
Canada is
So
drinking
it
age
was
is 19.
18 or 19, whatever it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. To go get
So
just trashed, right? I mean, that's the right. Just go get trashed,
yeah,
Trash.
because if you're
right?
going to go out of the country to buy something, you're not just going to buy one,
You're
you
not gonna
know?
just buy one. You're gonna buy as many as you can
You're
till
going to
you
buy a
can't buy anymore.
crate.
Yeah,
But one of the reasons I
so
was
good.
excited to have you on the show, Jeffrey, is I wanted to talk about patient advocates and patient access
Medical,
to
medical,
medical
baby.
in
Yeah,
because right now in the state we're all, it's like we're addicted to seeing how many new retailers are there, how many new adult use dispensaries
right.
are opening up, but what about our medical patients? Because arguably we would not have had the MRTA had it not been for the years of advocacy by the medical patients.
Correct.
Jeffrey is looking
So
up information.
no,
He is
I'm
on the World
literally getting
Wide
you.
Web.
No, I'm getting you the bill number, which I should have looked up before I got online, but I was, hoping your question would go a little bit longer. So look, the AU program always becomes the medical program always becomes the bastard stepchild of cannabis in the state once AU gets done. That we were certain. It's the way it's happening. Nikki's nodding her head. Nikki's
Yeah,
known
we can
about this
track it all
long
over the country.
before. Nikki, this has been Nikki's thing since long before we even knew each other. Just the medical program always becomes a bastard stepchild. But there is good news. I mean, so I bring you good news from the front or whatever. All right. So here's a couple of things. So from my perspective, the number one thing you could possibly do for medical, and I get there are some people that are against this because quote unquote you give it to the government. And I understand the theoretical argument there, but it's just like, come on, bro, what are we even talking about here? And that's letting the state funded insurance companies. So there's a bill now in the legislature, and we'll talk about its tortured history and where we are now in a second. But there's a bill that will basically say, if you're Aetna, we now allow you to cover medical cannabis. We know Aetna et al. Will not do it. However, there are like 4 or 5, I forget the exact number, state-funded health insurance entities in the state of New York. And this bill would require them to cover cannabis. So my take is this bill passes, every medical cannabis patient in the state immediately signs on to this health plan, and their medical cannabis is now covered.
But where are they going
Okay.
to get it?
We'll get to that. My point is once there's this is a chicken and egg problem. The reason why AU gets all the headlines is because that's where the money is. And I get people are unhappy about that. I get it. No one is, there are probably people more unhappy about me than we live in a follow the money world, but let's call it what it is and use it to our advantage to plan and strategize, make some strategery. Like, let's just, I'm not oh, I wish the world was this way and I'm going to try to get 7 billion people to agree with me. This is the way the world is. Let's get what we want out of the world, right? And so the thing is, what can we do here? We can get it to where there will be a funding mechanism for medical cannabis, and that is a bunch of people on an insurance plan that pays for the medical cannabis. There is now a pot of money there, and where there are pots of money, people get very interested. Paula, you know very well. I mean, we're attorneys. How interested are we in doing a bunch of litigation contingency when there's not a pot of money? The reason the only people that do this are injury lawyers is because at the end of the litigation, there's a pot of money, right? So there's got to be a pot of money somewhere for somebody, right? This is just the way the world works. And the way there's a pot of money in medical cannabis is that insurance covers it just like the other healthcare issues that we have in our society, right? So we got to get this bill passed. I'll give you the bill number right now. Well, let me give you the tortured history of it. So for years, it was passed in the Senate. Diane Servino was a champion of this bill. She got it passed every year in the Senate, and the Assembly never took it up. Don't get me started with the Assembly and what goes on in the Assembly. Don't even get me started about it. But the good thing about the Assembly is that the majority leader at least sees this as a great issue. It is her bill in the Assembly now. It is passed. You can look at the legislative history. It got through one of the things. I mean, I want all of my interests attached to the budget. End of thread. I get that I'm not going to get it. We did get, and Paula, we don't even want to talk about the enforcement, but they got it for just whatever. We knew we weren't going to get this as part of the budget. But now, as you know, the budget is over. Everybody went back to the districts for a week or two. And now starting in May is like the mad dash to some kind of recess in June where we throw everything but the kitchen sink or the spaghetti at the wall and see what we can get. So the bill number for everybody is A4713. That's A4713. The idea of the bill here is that we allow Aetna et al. To cover medical cannabis. We all know they won't. But you state entities, and again, I don't remember their names or exactly, it's 3, 4, 5, something. They ain't a lot, but like you guys have to cover it. We fund you. You are us. You must now do this. Shall. Aetna may. You guys shall. And everybody, legal distinctions, that's my favorite one, may and shall. So that's very important. We got to get that passed. That's how we get there. There's got to be a pot of money. And then people are going to get interested in medical cannabis. And then I hear you. Then we got to get more stores open. We got to get more people interested in it. We got to get the licensing flowing. I mean, we got to get that about AU anyway. AU's a mess, and we got to get that flowing faster. And Paula, you've got some great ideas, some that I agree with, some that I don't. But it's not the point whether or not I agree with it or not. It's that we need a marketplace of ideas, smart people bringing ideas to the table, and 50% plus one vote, I think, is how our country works. Right? So
Not always, but yeah.
I'm not. Look, again, it's the best I can do for you. Right? So, like, if we don't like it, we go get people unelected, and Paulie, we do exactly what you're trying to do: get the fucktards out and get good people in government, right? People that know what they're talking about and are going to prosecute the issues properly. But so, just again, medical cannabis. Everything else is moot if there's not a pot of money. And there will be stores if there's a pot of money. If all of a sudden, so I got 120, 130,000 medical cannabis folks in the state. I guarantee you the moment we start really publicizing medical these insurance programs cover medical cannabis, they'll get 500,000 people. Like I would be very surprised if they don't. And
well,
you get
if they need
go ahead,
a card,
Nikki.
Let's send them to Nikki in the plant and her
so say that.
link.
Say it. No, this is where you say it. Go.
Come to my website and get your medical card, Nikki.
What's
and
the website?
Plant, Nikkiandtheplant.org.
It's scrolling at the bottom.
There you go. Right there at the bottom.
Go to the patient information and you guys can get your medical card. It's like $100 in New York State. Use code PLANT. You get $10 off and boom slay. Like get your cards.
Slay.
Get those cards, people, because the pricing's better in the medical side of the dispensary. We don't pay the same taxes.
There's a tax break when you buy medical.
Huge.
And Nikki, here's your cue to talk about the difference in testing.
Well, the difference in testing, medical cannabis has a plus or minus 5% variance on what the product you're reading is. So they have QR codes now on all adult use products, and their results are plus or minus 15% compared to medical, which is 5%. So the quality of your products, the more clean your products are going to be in the medical program. There's true advantage, we're dealing with a lot of different products that farmers still have on their shelves from 2 years ago that are trying to get to market, and their terpenes are like gone. They're like,
shouldn't that just be turned into distillate? Shouldn't the state just create some program where the state says, everybody bring all your stuff to one facility, we'll turn it into distillate, whatever you yield, we'll give you X number of dollars per whatever metric you want to use, and we're done with it, and let's get rid of all that old crop and move on. I mean, that would make sense, correct?
That's the buyback guns. That's the buyback guns program.
Okay, but so how else are you going to help these people not go buyback guns program? Yes,
Jeffrey, it would take them forever to come up with that program.
No, they could do it in 5 minutes.
I know they could. But they could.
But will they?
But yeah, I agree with Joseph Ortiz. It makes way too much sense.
Anything That
We
makes too much sense. It doesn't happen.
look at what failed
I
in
mean,
this assembly session. This budget session, we couldn't even
No.
do a bail out the farmers bill. We'll bail out everything else in this country. We won't bail out the farmers.
That's a problem.
So this is where, back to what we said earlier, you have to put your people in government, right? And
Run
this is
for
what
something.
cannabis.
Yeah.
I got too much else. I'm just saying, other people have to do it, right? People have to, like, Nikki, you go run. This is the big thing is we have to fundraise. We have to get a pack together. So like we do have to start doing this in cannabis, and I don't think cannabis is like mature enough as an overall industry in the U.S. to really kind of be honing in on this yet. And it's just every other industry does it. We have to have a very serious pack. We have to, like, I had Eli Northrup on my show the other day here. He's running up on the Upper West Side, a little bit of Upper
Yeah.
Manhattan. You need people like him. He works with the Bronx Defenders and was part of the Cannabis Hub, and they got tons of people card licenses, right? You need people that understand issues and get it to be the people making the laws. It's just it's that simple, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't have people doing that, you've got to get other people, and you have to go. You give them a chance. You get meetings with them, and my biggest beef with some of them up there recently is they didn't want to meet with some cards, and that was really weird, really weird. But you give them a chance. Say, look, these are our issues. We'd love to engage with you. This is what we'd like to see you do. You don't want to do it? We're gonna primary you, right? I mean, that's it. Simple.
I mean, it's really mind blowing when you really think about how many things could be improved if they just actually listen to those in the industry or those that have been in the industry for a long time. I find it very frustrating, like at the OCM level, and I genuinely feel that they need like a liaison, such as myself, to kind of dumb this down for the public, but to have some kind of communication that we can, get to the people that are making these decisions. And I feel like there's
Making
huge
too much sense again. Yeah. Your Joe's comment. We're making too much sense, Nikki.
Here's the thing. In my numerous interactions of late with the New York State Board of Elections, which is a complicated entity, right? They run multiple elections. They go from having nothing to do to suddenly having everything in the world to do. I can, without an appointment, walk up to the 5th floor at 40 North Pearl Street, ask a question. If that person doesn't know the answer, they will say, wait one moment, let me get somebody who can help you. And they will go and find somebody who can help me. And if the answer is way too long, they will come out from behind the window and come into the common area and sit down right next to me and we'll look through documents. I mean,
This is in Albany. This is in
this
Albany,
is in
right?
Albany.
Yeah.
Yes. And it is almost as if they understand customer service and their purpose, right? Their purpose is to help people understand the election process. Why
and they
can't we
seem to
why can't
explain that
we
well.
walk into an OCM office, ask a question, and get an answer?
So I just do come back to how long have we had an SLA versus an OCM? And I don't know what an experience would be in OCM, but we've been having elections for, I do think we'll get there. And like, I'm with you, Paula. It could be like that, right? Like if you had taken, I think that's what they tried to do at first by having it under health. Like, let's have it in a
Yeah.
bureaucracy that exists, that knows how to be a bureaucracy. And look, I very much like the people at OCM, right? I work with a lot of them. They've not done a great job of setting up a bureaucracy. And I mean, everybody hates this word bureaucracy, but it's like you and I as practicing attorneys, Paula, with clients, sending an email off to some AU licensing, that's not how you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you have, I mean, I get it. You don't have that deep of an interaction with every applicant, but you certainly have more than they have had. But once you get to the licensee part, it's like you have an account manager, and here's Tim or Tina or
Yeah.
Daphne, and
You do.
this is your person here. You don't email all of our other general stuff. You don't email Mr. Alexander. You don't email this person or that person. You email Tim and you say, Tim, we're supposed to do this on April 26th, and we need this from you to do that. Can we get it? And then Tim goes into his bureaucracy and helps. And it's just, you got to do that at any level to be successful at scale. You cannot scale if you don't have something like that. And it's just, we don't have that yet. And until they have something like that, it's going to be very difficult to scale licensing and all of this stuff. It's just, you can't without that kind of framework. You can't.
Well, I think we need to adjust that framework before we need to focus on enforcement personally. Just saying. I mean,
I didn't pay her to say that, by the way. I did not, no money exchanged.
I
Yeah.
mean, but think about that for a minute. I mean, how can the unlicensed shops even get customer service to find out how to get licensed if they
Right.
just have to write, you know, dear OCM and hope it lands on somebody's desk that actually might respond to them instead of sending an FAQ question thing back?
Yeah.
You know, that's not how you help people. And I feel like we've lost that sense of, as a state and a community and a governing body, like we should be helping. Finally, Jeff and I agree on something.
The earth stood still for a brief moment there, but Ruben, we have moved on. The earth is now moving.
Yeah, I proposed this to the OCM and CCB a year ago.
I just think that it would really enhance their beleaguered public image if
Yes, they
if
need
they would-
somebody. They need
if they would
a
pay
liaison.
5 people $12 an hour, even. I don't, you can't pay people
So you
$12
can't-
an hour
so-
anymore. But
Well, so it's not just that you can't do that. And here's I'm not being an apologist. So here, Ruben's going to get mad at me again. I'm not being an apologist for them. Here's the thing. It is hard to do. You're a completely new bureaucracy. And this is why health, it was so good, I think, having it under health. And I almost kind of wish they'd have left it there a little longer, right? It's just, it's tough to build a new bureaucracy, right? It's tough to have all of this stuff recreated de novo, right?
but
And go ahead, Paula.
I mean, I appreciate that you're sympathetic to their woes, but this is 2024.
Yeah.
This is not the first state agency to spring into existence, and I always go back to New York was not the first state to regulate, and
Yep.
the MRTA was not the first bill to be proposed. And so, why didn't they? A patient advisory council. Somebody's. Oh, that was the
It's me.
host. The hostess with the
Me.
mostest. I think that what we need is to hold people to some level of performance standard. I mean, this would not fly in private practice. It's just we could drift along for a year, but my calendar says it's 2024 and it's long time
But that's
for them to get it together.
the doorstep of the governor and the legislature. I mean, they're the only ones. You and I, Kim, go file all the motions to compel that you want. This is in the lap of the governor and the legislature, and they absolutely control it. They control the appointments. They control the law that governs the regulation. So I mean, it's just if it's either they do something or the regulator just keeps doing what they're doing. And
So
that
speaking
is
of
an
the
option.
law
Go ahead.
and
Yeah.
litigation and so on, talk
Yeah.
to us about what you're doing with Gracious Greens.
So I'm not Gracious Greens attorney.
Right.
I'm Valley Greens attorney, just so we're clear. Thank you for asking about this case. This was what I was up in Albany about. The Gracious Greens, it wants to get rid of proximity protection in the state, basically. And I'm all for a discussion about it. It's just I'm the attorney of a store not a store yet, of a card that has proximity protection in Peekskill, right? So I will vigorously defend my client's interest. That's what as you know very well, Paula, that is the fundamental essence of what you and I do, right? And so I'm not even, it's interesting in that case, I'm not even really arguing the fundamental so much. We did get
No,
into
you're
some of the
not.
fundamental
It's
arguments.
procedural.
Yeah, the entity, I mean, just real quick, the entity that's filing the lawsuit does you have, if you're an LLC in the state of New York, you have to file what's called a notice of publication. And everybody doesn't do it. No one does it. Well, I mean, lots of people do it, but plenty of people don't do it. And there's only one penalty for not doing it, and it's that you're not allowed to maintain an action in the state of New York. Basically, you do not have access to the courts of the state of New York. You're not an entity in the eyes of the state of New York, and you don't have access to the courts. And it appears that Gracious Greens didn't do that. They've now tried to cure it. And so they have to publish it for 6 weeks in a newspaper, which I'm sure they're doing right now. But when they originally did this 2 years ago, you have 120 days to do it. They didn't do it in that period. So from day 120 and 1 femtosecond until whenever they finally get it to the state and publish it, they can't file a lawsuit. You're not an entity that can file a lawsuit. So that's my motion. It was actually calendared for Friday, and the judge, to be fair, the way we got there is from the order to show cause, what's called an OSC by Gracious Greens, and that was what was kind of filed first. I didn't file the motion to dismiss after that. So I guess proper procedure is that you hear the OSC, you see what you're going to do, and then you hear my motion to dismiss. And also the thing is, I'm kind of tangentially in the caption. And James mentions Big Gas. They're the other dispensary that this impacts, because the plaintiffs, Gracious Greens, say, well, we're not happy about proximity protection for Gracious Greens in New Paltz, and we're not happy about proximity protection for Valley Greens over in Peekskill. So the judge heard, hearing on the injunction. It was a fascinating argument. Dave and Andrew over on the other side, they're very smart attorneys. I mean, they are the cannabis bar. When I talk about the cannabis bar, who's in the cannabis bar? In every part of the law, in every state, there's a bankruptcy bar and a divorce bar or family law bar. There's a cannabis bar. Members of the cannabis bar, people like Paula Collins, and certainly Dave and Andrew, right? These guys are top shelf attorneys. They've got a very interesting set of facts with their client, and it's really neat to be in court arguing with them, right? They're colleagues. We party together, and it's just kind of neat, right? So we'll see what happens. I do think there's a reasonable argument for their argument about the injunction. We'll just kind of see how that goes. But just again, I think my motion to dismiss completely wins. I've got appellate division, black letter law, where in fact it says in the opinion, it would be like an embarrassment to the or insult to the statute if we allowed the plaintiffs to do this after the defendants made them aware of it. I mean, which is exactly, it's like describing my scenario exactly. Like, you would be offending the statute if you did. This is an appellate division. This is like, we're in Supreme Court now. This is an appellate division case that says that. So I think I've got a good argument there. It's just, I would like the state to file a motion to dismiss with me. Like I said, we're kind of it's like they're suing OCM and they've named me or my client and Big Gas in the lawsuit, because like if they win, well, everybody's impacted. But for the moment, and the argument is, what do they win if they win? Just you could have multiple dispensaries right next to each other, right? Just their argument is that the 1,000-foot rule, which is I think what it is in Peekskill, or the 2,000-foot rule in New Paltz, just should not be allowed, right?
And Ruben brings up a good point. There could be 10 pizza places, and in other places we have tons of bars. So there isn't any kind of proximity protection for any other type of business.
And I think that's potentially a very valid point. Ruben asked, doesn't this violate home rule? So in MRTA, in the cannabis law, section 64, and the other one is I think 85 or so. I don't remember what the second one is, but 64 is the one that I really like. It specifically talks about the board being able to create regulations that determine where stores are going to be. And one of the things they take into consideration is the proximity to other stores in various jurisdictions. I mean, it seems to me that is clearly the legislature preempting the home rule, which is exactly what is allowed here. 85, Ruben, exactly. So it's 64 and 85. So I think those are dispositive in this case. I mean, yeah, it'll probably end up being a court of appeals case where we argue that, but I think that's black letter law in the cannabis law that says, yes, board, you may create regulations that determine the proximity of stores to other stores. And it's not that you do it on a store-by-store basis. It says regulations. Regulations are not on a store-by-store basis. Regulations are as a blanket case across stores, right? And it just says proximity from other stores. right? So it seems to me that is black letter law saying they can do this. Now, Ruben, I may agree with you. And I actually talked with people that were pretty high up at OCM who are no longer there. So that obviously makes it a very small subset of people. I'll let you figure out who it might be. But that maybe this is not going to be for all time, right? That maybe their thinking here was, let's do 1,000 foot or 2,000 feet in the smaller municipalities for a while until the people that are there were going to be able to get their footing, so to speak, not have people cannibalizing each other's footprints right away, right? So say, okay, you're in this business where you've got 280E, you've already got a 50, 60% effective tax rate, you're competing with these illicit stores, so you have a higher price than the product is available elsewhere on the market. Maybe we'll at least give you some geography where you can just be the only legal store for a while. And, these individuals who shall remain nameless, we're like, maybe at some point it goes down to 750 or 500 or 200, or disappears completely, or who knows what, right? But this was the thinking, right? Not like this is some absolute maximum of there can only be stores not that close. Yeah.
The thing I would love to see them amend, which it would take an amendment, is not only the proximity protection and the footage from door to door, but also in the city, I think it would help if we could go to a second floor or third floor, because honestly, I think that would be a safer dispensary.
With an elevator, with a
With an
mandatory elevator, mandatory
because of
elevator.
ADA
Right? Okay.
rules.
Yeah,
But
mandatory elevator. I'm down. Yeah.
if you go to DC, there are of course, a lot of them don't have elevators because they spring up during the period
Everywhere.
when anybody was opening.
Yeah.
But I rather like it that there's the kind of bouncer downstairs, and you'll show your ID and then they radio up. And so that anybody who makes it all the way up to the stairs should be there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
And so I think it was
sound idea. And
yeah.
maybe even have consumption like that where you have really well. So I think about for those of you that have been in New York City, you go to Little Korea, which is 32nd Herald Square area, 32nd between Broadway and 5th, 6th and 5th, Broadway and 5th, all in there. And you have these second and third floor karaoke places and cook at the table places, the Korean, and they've got these incredible ventilation things, which are sucking up all of the grease and the smoke and everything coming off the cooking, with clearly enough for, I think you could do consumption. I mean, clearly we got to figure stuff out with people, and the NIMBYs are coming for the New York City Clean Indoor Air Act, and that's going to be a whole nother fight. But I think this is doable, and I just think you're absolutely right that this everything has to be on the first floor. I want it for ADA reasons, but as long as we have an elevator getting up there, yeah, why not, right? Why not, indeed.
There are some swank unlicensed shops in K-Town that are on second or third floors.
Or
really beautiful.
I've been in some penthouse like ones, right? I mean, come on, it's
really
everything.
Beautiful.
Everything that you can imagine is happening, right? And let's just make it all look, and everyone gets, Paula and I have some different ideas about some things, and that's what makes the universe beautiful. We both agree that we want an incredibly robust cannabis industry in New York, and we want all of that creativity to be possible. So we are much more in favor of, and I hate to say it because it sounds so, like we don't have any control of it, but permissiveness of it, right? I want the ideas. I get it's harder to reel it in if we let you do more earlier. I get it. They we're going to be stricter earlier and we're going to let you do more later as we get it. And I just think we've already been doing it for a long time. It's not like people don't know how to do this, right?
And I come back to, we already have a robust cannabis industry in New York. We don't have the industry that many people wanted. It doesn't look like the way people wanted it to look, but we have the industry. You can't deny that. It is reality.
It just could be so much bigger. And I think that we're missing out on the tax revenue, which I do want, because what I do like that's being part of this is kind of any attempt at kind of some kind of restorative financing into the communities that were devastated by this. And I get that's going to have its own bugaboos when we get to that, when there's real tax revenue 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. And like, hopefully the board is going to be able to, because, there's this cannabis advisory board that a lot of folks aren't paying attention to right now that are going to be the ones that assign where that 40% of money goes, right? So like that's going to go from an afterthought from a lot of folks to like, whoa, look at what's going on. Look at the pot. Remember the pot of money? Whoa, look at the pot of money these people are giving. I just wait until that free for all starts getting going here, right? So
And
I just think
that
what's that?
taxation piece is where I got really intrigued with the unlicensed people and thinking,
Right.
we are missing
You're missing it all.
hundreds of millions of dollars of tax
Not
revenue.
billions. No, you're missing billions of dollars. I think just my back of the envelope, and I haven't done like a Wall Street quality spreadsheet on this yet, but my back of the envelope math is that if New York was done right, if we really could have, like one of my ideas was like, hey, plugs of New York City, you're now the delivery infrastructure. Here's some rules. We're gonna put a GPS on you or whatever. Here's some rules. You follow them, and we're all just going to make a ton of money. Just money, right? And no one's going to even think about arresting you. You just go deliver to all your current customers from a legal store. Here's your cut. Here's the rules you got to follow. Money. Woo! Everywhere. But we didn't do that. But like, if you could do that, this is what I'm getting about the permissiveness, right? And so if you can do more ideas like that, you could just capture all that tax revenue. And again, my back of the envelope math, it's a $10 to $15 billion industry in New York State, right? Billion with a B. And you don't need a lot of points off of that for your take on an annual basis to be $1 billion, right?
So
and
then
all of the ancillary, we just got to do it right now, right? That's all.
Yeah,
Go
we
ahead.
do. We do.
Sorry,
And
I
then
apologize.
we could save the SUNY schools that are facing tremendous budget deficits. We could save some of the communities, put new community programs in. We could save the K through 12 schools.
This
We
is the
could have
40%. This is the 40%. I mean, this money should go directly towards these things in the communities that were more impacted, dropping exactly what you're saying, Paula. 100%.
yeah.
And Joe, I agree with the casinos and HVAC. It should be applied to lounges. My pre-nursing background was HVAC and indoor air quality, so I'm very
And
savvy on the importance of it and the importance of air changes. And we are missing a huge boat because cannabis consumption,
That's it.
when we literally are in, apartment houses or in condos and they don't allow smoking there, how do patients get to consume their medicine? If you're in subsidized housing by the government, you'll get thrown out, so we need to have safe consumption places. And it shouldn't be that hard to figure out. And like go into the Cosmopolitan anytime, day or night, full on packed humans. You never smell cigars or cigarettes at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we could just implement those rules here, I just think we'd have a lot less people bitching. And we'd also have a lot less people bitching if they had a safe place to go inside and medicate or consume instead of
which they don't.
New York City.
That's why this is why we have smoke anywhere you can smoke cigarettes as the rule, is because we don't have that. To your exact point. And especially here in New York City, the #1 city on the planet for my entire lifetime of arresting and incarcerating people for cannabis, you got to give people a place to smoke it, right? And I want to give a shout out to Ruben because I like that he and I are agreeing on some points. I like that Ruben sees that he and I actually do agree on quite a few points. So I dig it, Ruben. Thank you, sir. It's awesome. Thumbs up to you, sir.
And we appreciate everyone, as always, tuning in. It was a pleasure having Jeffrey Hoffman on our podcast this evening.
I loved it. You guys are the best. I mean, again, just formative moments of my life have been with you two. Just to reiterate, just to say again, the very first event that I was ever at as like a speaker with cannabis was with Paula Collins. I mean, it was just unbelievable because I knew who she was, and everybody in like Paul said, who is this guy? No one had any idea who I was, and it was amazing. It was such a great event. This was the first one, and Nikki was with me I met her in a bar in a subway stop in New York City before MJ Unpacked. And Nikki was with me when I met Brooke, who was Humberto Ramirez's wife, in front of the Hilton.
Yes.
Who then we
yes.
got out of jail in New
But
Jersey.
here-
So we like live. Go ahead. Yeah.
here's where Jeffrey distinguished himself in that panel in Weeksville, because I was still using language from the New Jersey code, right? So I was calling it social equity, and also from the California laws. But Jeffrey insisted on calling it social and economic equity.
SEE.
Social and economic.
So he's the C worder. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, guys.
You guys
it's been
are the
fun.
best. You guys are the best. My woman watches you every week. Actually,
Aw.
she's not on this week because she doesn't watch my show on Wednesdays either because she doesn't want to jinx me, but I'm sure she'll watch this in a rerun. But you guys are the best. And just again, you guys have been at formative parts of my career here in the business, and I love you guys. So it's awesome, and it was a privilege to be on your show.
Likewise,
Thanks,
Jeffrey.
guys.
Back at you. Okay,
Thank
bye.
you so much. Have a
See
good
you
one.
next